Growing up, I was a fan and still am a great fan of comedians. I love comedians. Though most people know me as a rather serious person, unless they really get to know me, because I can be quite goofy at times. But I love comedians. I love the greats. I love Eddie Murphy. I love my man Dave Chappelle. I love this new generation of comics, Kevin Hart. And I'm naming a lot of African American brothers, but for the sake of today's sermon, there's a brother who's not quite our shade, who I'd like to raise up as a comedic genius, a comedy legend on today. And this brother's name is Rodney Dangerfield. Rodney Dangerfield was a very interesting comedian because a lot of his material had to do with his shortcomings. He would often make fun of himself, and he developed this catchphrase that he would say all the time, and he was known for it. He would tighten up his little tie and would say, "No respect at all." He would share a story about some sort of shortcoming in his life, and many times how the woman in his life would throw it in his face, and he would shake that tie just a little bit and say, no respect at all. I raise this because it is commonly known and universally accepted for some reason that today is not as celebrated as a day we celebrated not too long ago. I don't know what it is. I don't know why this is. I pray that we can explore this just a little bit on today. But for some reason, it is commonly known and universally accepted that Father's Day does not get as celebrated as Mother's Day. Many comedians like to joke and say that you can get in any restaurant on Father's Day, but on Mother's Day, you can expect to wait 2 hours just to get a table. You can find balloons and flowers and candy and things of that nature on Father's Day, but if you wait too long for Mother's Day, you ain't finding none of that. I don't know what it is, but Father's Day does not get as celebrated as Mother's Day. One could raise up that witty motto of Rodney Dangerfield: there's no respect at all. And if you're a father on today and you're feeling like, man, the kids didn't go all out for me like they went out for mama. My boo didn't do it up for me the way I did it up for her. I want to suggest that there's a brother who knows how you feel. And that brother's name is Joseph. Now, there are fathers all over the world that do amazing things, but none of those fathers can say they raised Jesus. Now, listen, your child is good. Don't get me wrong. They probably get straight A's. You do never have to whoop them. But your child ain't Jesus. And Joseph raises Jesus. Yet even though Joseph raises Jesus, Mary gets all the credit. Think about it. There's so many references to Mary in the Bible. In fact, Mary gets so much credit that our Catholic brothers and sisters pray to Mary. Joseph raised Jesus, but he's not as celebrated as that dear sister named Mary. And I believe that Joseph may be feeling the same way Rodney felt. No respect at all. And if I were to give today's sermon a title, it would be just that: no respect at all. Today I want to share with you 3 possible reasons that fathers are not as celebrated as mothers. Now, again, these are just possibilities. I'm not saying that these are gospel, but I believe that as we look at the life of this brother named Joseph, as we look at his moves during the little time that he's mentioned in the Bible, there are some character traits of fathers that I believe attribute to this idea, attribute to this attitude, attribute to this behavior of not celebrating fathers the way we celebrate mothers. Again, I want to give you 3 possible reasons fathers are not as celebrated as mothers. And I'm going to make a rather shocking statement right here. Brothers, believe it or not, if you are a good father, it's partially your fault. If you are a good father, I know I'm about to stir up some mess right now, but if you are a good father, it is partially your fault. You'll see what I mean as we look at the life of Joseph. The first reason I believe that fathers are not as celebrated as mothers, the reason Father's Day is not as celebrated as Mother's Day, is because fathers are foundations. I'm going to say that again. fathers are foundations. I'm going to give you 3 F's today. Fathers are foundations. The reason Father's Day doesn't get the traffic that Mother's Day gets is because fathers are foundation. Now, you're not going to know what I mean unless I break this thing down. And so, what is a foundation? I went to my 2 good friends, Merriam and Webster, and Merriam-Webster defines the word foundation as an underlying base or support, a body or ground upon which something is built up or overlaid. I'm going to give that to you one more time. A foundation is an underlying base of support. It is a body or ground upon which something is built up or overlaid. Now, what do I mean when I say, now that we know what a foundation is, what do I mean when I say that fathers are foundations? Well, as we look at Matthew chapter 1, verses 18 and 20, just to give you a little reiteration of what's happening, Joseph has just found out that his boo, that his fiance, that his queen-to-be, as they say on Coming to America, has been knocked up. Now, that normally would be exciting news to a man. The problem is, Joseph ain't touched her. And so you have this man who has just received news that the woman he wants to marry is already pregnant. To make matters worse, the story he's given is that this is the work of the Holy Spirit. I could imagine this episode on Maury right now. I could just imagine the disbelief on Joseph's face being confronted by this sister Mary saying, Joe, listen, I'm pregnant, but I got some bad news. This baby ain't yours. However, don't get mad, put your pistol away. It's the Holy Spirit. Listen, I don't care how long you've been saved, how long you've been holding on to Jesus. If that's the news that you just got from your fiance, I don't know how religious you would be. I don't know how solid in your faith you would be. But Joe responds like most of us would respond. He like, sis, this is too much. And so the Bible lets us know that Joseph is a just man. Old Jojo is going to put her away privately. He says, listen, even though I'm hurt right now, even though I'm not sure if I believe what you're telling me, this is just too much for me. This is not what I signed up for. But listen, I love you, baby. So I'm going to put you away privately. No one has to know. We're going to go ahead and sign these papers, and I'm going to get up out of here. However, as Joseph makes this decision, an angel shows up. And the angel reaffirms the story of Mary. Because God knew the only way Joe going for this is if I come down myself, if I send a representative down there to let him know Joseph ain't having this unless I send some evidence. I know we walk by faith and not by sight, but Joe needed some evidence for this thing. And so God sends an angel down to back up Mary's story, and Joseph agrees. Joseph is uncomfortable. This isn't what he planned for his family. This is not the way he saw his life going. But Joseph, being the man of God, God knew he was. Joseph says, okay, I'll do it. And so what we see in the text is that though God impregnates Mary without Joseph, God refuses to allow Jesus to be raised without Joseph. I'm going to say that again. That's what we need to see in this text, is that God impregnates Mary without him. But God says, she's not raising him without you. God deems Joseph necessary for this process. Even though he didn't use Joseph to get in this, he says, I need Joseph to get out of this. Which brings me to my first thought. Families are birthed through the wombs of mothers, but they are built on the backs of fathers. I'm going to say that again. Families are birthed through the wombs of mothers, but they are built on the backs of fathers. Again, God has set up this scenario where he impregnates Mary by way of the Holy Spirit. But he says, listen, even though I started this thing without Joseph, I can't finish this thing without Joseph. And I want to encourage a stepdad on today that listen, you may not have started that journey with her, but God deemed it necessary for you to walk with her through that journey. A father is foundational. God says, listen, if Jesus is going to be a man, I need him to see a man. Yes. And so he has to build this family off the back of Joseph. It's uncomfortable. It's not what Joseph signed up for. It's not the life he thought that he would have. He did not expect the ridicule that would come. But Joseph says, listen, if this is how it has to go, then God, you can build this family on my back. Families are birthed through the wombs of mothers, but they are built on the backs of fathers. A father is a foundation. Fathers are necessary. Listen, don't get me wrong. I know that you miss Independent and you swear you don't need a man. Destiny Child song is your anthem. But it was God's original design that the family be built off the back of the man. The man, the father, is the foundation of the family. And God keeps this going. This ain't just an Old Testament virtue, but he carries this thing into the New Testament. He carries this thing into the move, even as it relates to his son. Listen, if my son is going to be the man that I need him to be, I need him to see a man. I need there to be a foundation. I cannot build this family without you. And this is why the enemy attacks our fathers so bad. This is why the enemy wants our fathers out of the home. Why? Because if he can take the father out of the home, if he can break the father, then what he's doing is removing or breaking the foundation of the family. He knows that he can begin to make this family unstable if he can remove the foundation. It is not by happenstance. It is not by coincidence that our fathers have found themselves under the attacks that they found themselves, because the enemy knows he is ruining the foundation if he can ruin the father.
Yes. Hallelujah.
Joseph says, I didn't sign up for this, but I'm willing to put myself to the side.
Yes.
And I'll be the foundation. The text goes on in Matthew 1:24 through 25. Even though he has gotten this news, even though he's not quite sure about how to even respond to this thing, the Bible lets us know that Joseph goes on to marry her and to raise Jesus, and even goes on to name Jesus. Now again, God hasn't used him for any of this process so far, but he deems him necessary. He deems him necessary and deems him vital to this process. And Joseph humbles himself. He humbles himself because a good father knows how to humble himself. I don't fully agree with this thing, but I'm going to humble myself. I don't quite know how this is going to work out, but I'm going to humble myself. God, I'm a little shaky in my faith right now, but I'm going to humble myself. I'm going to humble myself, and the folks are already talking about me, but I'm going to humble myself. They whispering about my baby mama, but I'm going to humble myself. They looking at my kids a certain way, but I'm going to humble myself because I have to be a stable foundation. Which brings me to my next thought. A good father is willing to lay himself down today to lift his family tomorrow. A good father is willing to lay himself down today to lift up his family tomorrow. The interesting thing about a foundation, when you look at the foundation of a home or a building, is that a foundation has to be poured out. A foundation is poured out. A foundation, after it is poured out, is then spread out, because you don't place a foundation, you lay down a foundation. And this is the sign of a good father. A good father is one who says, listen, I may not be confident in this thing. There's no manual to this. I don't even fully know what I'm doing. In some cases, I don't even know how I got in this mess. But I'm going to pour myself out into this thing, and I'm going to spread myself out into this thing, and I'm going to lay myself down, because the more I lay myself down, the more stable of a foundation my family will have to build up. Yes. And so a good father is willing to lay himself down today to lift up his family tomorrow. Now, how does this lead to fathers not being celebrated? I told you it's our fault. It's our fault. If we good brothers, it's our fault that this is happening, that we're not celebrated. Again, fathers are foundations. And if you know anything about a foundation, foundations aren't seen. You don't see a good foundation. Me and my wife just went house hunting, and we were looking at houses. And I'm ashamed to admit, it really only hit me as I was preparing this sermon. I'm ashamed to admit that we looked at the appliances. that we looked at all the rooms, that we looked at the ceiling, that we checked out the fireplace, that we checked all these things, the flooring, we checked the lighting, we checked the plumbing. But one thing we never asked is, how's the foundation? Because you don't see a foundation, but you feel a foundation. And that's how it is with fathers. You don't see the load that a good father is carrying, but you feel the benefits of it. A father wears the burden so that the family can enjoy the benefits. And this is why we often aren't as celebrated as we should be, because we carry the burdens of our family and they don't see how much we're carrying. Listen, me and my wife just got a real beautiful house, and I see all the beautiful benefits that house has, but I only see those beautiful benefits because of what I don't see. I don't see the foundation of the house. I don't see all that beauty being on the back of this foundation. And there's a father right now, I want to encourage you. You've been carrying your family for a long time. And watch this. You don't show signs that you're tired, but no one's checking for you, because again, they don't see what you're carrying. They only feel the benefits of what you're carrying. But I want to encourage you today that God sees how much you're carrying, that God sees the load you're bearing. And if no one ever asks you if you're all right, that God will send an angel to let you know it's going to be all right. That if no one ever asks for to lend a helping hand, that God will lift you up, that God won't let you fall, that God won't let you fold. You know, the irony of foundations is that you don't start talking about foundations or looking at foundations until something's wrong with the foundation.
Yes.
And this is the problem that fathers face, is that we wear the weight well. And by the time you see that there's a crack in my foundation, it's too late. That by the time you see that our family is starting to fall, it's too late. We don't celebrate fathers the way we should, because we're so enamored by the beauty that we're benefiting from the burden he's carrying. You don't see a good foundation. But not only do you not see a good foundation, you don't hear a good foundation. If a foundation is good, you don't hear anything. And there's a father right now that's carrying this weight, who's carrying the troubles, who's carrying the future, who's carrying the success of his family, and he's never uttering a word. Because you don't hear a good foundation. A good father doesn't throw up in your face how much he's doing for you. A good father doesn't remind you of all the things he's taking care of. A good father doesn't keep a running list of all the things that he's holding together in the family. You don't hear a good foundation until something's going wrong. You hear a foundation when it's cracking. You hear a foundation when it's crumbling. You hear a foundation as the house is beginning to fall apart. And there's a father on today who just needs to cry out that I'm carrying too much. And I want to encourage you to have the difficult conversation with your family. I know they don't see everything you're carrying. I know they don't understand how you're keeping everything together. But maybe, just maybe, you have to have the difficult conversation and say, listen, this is too much.
Yes.
So many fathers are dying in silence because they're the foundation of the family. And don't get me wrong, God has equipped you to be the foundation. But sometimes it gets difficult. Sometimes the weight becomes too much. And this is the importance of having a community. This is the importance of having brothers around you, seasoned brothers who've been through some things, strong men who've been married for years, to tell you, listen, me and my wife have weathered some storms, that there were some days I didn't know if my children was going to make it, but God is faithful. And I just want to get in there and build up your foundation. Because the moment the foundation starts to crack, watch this, you got to call an expert. You got to call somebody who's dealt with damaged foundations. You got to contact somebody who knows the signs of a failing foundation. And I want to encourage you today that fathers, God sees your foundation. Fathers, God will send somebody to help restore your foundation. God will keep you from falling apart because the destiny of your family depends on it. Why don't we celebrate you the way we should? Because in many cases, we're too busy enjoying the benefits that you give us. We don't have to worry about the things you're holding. We don't even have to think about the things you're juggling. And I would argue that this is the reason why we don't celebrate you, but this should also be the reason why we celebrate you. Fathers, we celebrate you today because we can sleep good at night while you're up trying to figure out our future. Fathers, we celebrate you today because you're juggling things that the average man could not juggle. Fathers, we celebrate you because you're denying your present to give us a future. Fathers, we celebrate you because of the great sacrifice. Father, we celebrate you because God sent us into the earth and you laid yourself down and said, God, spread me however you need to spread me and build my family.
Yes.
Buy that man a steak today because he's your foundation. You throw something on the grill today. It's amazing how you like to buy dad's grills for Father's Day and then put them on the grill to cook the meal. But that's a foundation. A foundation says, God, I thank you that my family gave me something to make my job easier. I thank you that my family recognized that my areas of expertise and gave me something to make my service better. We don't celebrate them because we don't see, we don't hear, they don't remind us, they don't throw up in our face all the things that they've done for us. But I want to encourage you to open your eyes today. I want to encourage you to open your ears today and recognize what your father is doing. Hear what your father is not saying and help him to be the foundation God has called him to be. Men don't really need a lot of compliments. All we need to know is that you trust us. If you never tell a man thank you and just tell him I trust you, that's enough to keep him going. And I want to encourage you that if you ain't already get you a Hallmark card, grab you a piece of paper and just simply say, Dad, I trust you with this family. Husband, I trust you with this family. I don't always know how you do it. And I'm so glad that you don't throw up in my face everything that you do. But I just want you to know that I trust you. That you're the foundation that God is building this family on. And I know you won't let us fall. Yes. I should have got 8 amens from brothers right there. 8 amens, new beginning. We don't celebrate fathers because they're the foundation. And the same way when we go house hunting that we don't ask them how's the foundation, it's the same reason we don't ask Dad, are you okay? He's the foundation. Not only do we not celebrate them because they're foundations, but we don't celebrate them because fathers are facilitators. Fathers are facilitators. Well, you just type that in the comment. My daddy is a facilitator because fathers are facilitators. Now, some of you are like, Pastor Mike, that's a word I don't really use too often. What is a facilitator? Well, I asked my good friends Merriam and Webster again, and they let me know that to facilitate means to make easier and to help bring something about. So a facilitator helps to make things easier and helps to bring things about. Now, what does this have to do, or excuse me, what do I mean when I say a father is a facilitator? Well, as we read in Matthew chapter 2, verses 13 and 15, and even if you go a little further down to verses 19 and 22, the Bible lets us know, and y'all know I love God's Word translation, I do, but they made me mad as I was preparing this sermon because they changed some stuff around that they shouldn't change. Every translation I went to said that the angel came to Joseph. The angel came to Joseph. The angel came to Joseph. And I got to my favorite translation of the Bible, and it said the angel came to them. And so I'm like, well, hold on, what does this say in the original language? Because I need to know who's right. And in the original language, he came to Joseph. And so I'm beefing with God's word this week. We'll try him again next week. But both times when the family was in danger, the angel did not come to Mary. The angel came to Joseph. I need you to wrap your mind around that, because when the angel had good news, he came to Mary. But when the angel had bad news, he came to Joseph. I'm going to say that again. When he came with good tidings, as King James like to say it, he came to Mary. But when he had some devastating news, he came to Joseph. Why is this important? Because Joseph is the facilitator. Joseph has to make some difficult decisions now, because the bad news that has come to Joseph is that somebody wants to kill his son. Jesus ain't been alive that long, and he done already made an enemy. There is a man so intimidated by Jesus' purpose, by Jesus' destiny, that he says, kill every baby under this age and in this region. There was a systemic assault on a certain group of young men. This sounds real familiar. There was an all-out assault on brothers that looked a certain way and grew up in a certain area, and the government wanted to put these boys down. And the angel comes to the facilitator. He says, listen, Mary could handle the good news, but I don't know if Mary can handle what I'm about to tell you. The government is after your baby. And this is what I need you to do. Joseph gets his family together and says, we got to go. I don't have time to explain it. I just need you to trust me. We got to get young Jesus out of here. And after he facilitates that and they get comfortable for just a little bit, the angel comes back and says, listen, I know I told you to come here, but Herod's dead now, and I need you to go back this way. And so he has to pack his family up again. He has to make this tough decision. He probably can't articulate it. He can't make sense of it. But he's saying, family, I need you to trust me. I'm making some decisions behind the scene that are affecting yours. Watch this. Herod wants to end Jesus' story prematurely. But it's the decisions that Joseph makes that changes the destiny of their story. He literally changes the destiny, the destination of his family's future by the invisible decisions that he's making behind the scene. He's a facilitator. Now, how does this lend to this idea of us not celebrating fathers? Well, next thought. A good father's voice can be trusted even when his vision can't be seen. I'm going to say that again. A good father's voice can be trusted even when his vision can't be seen. Now, if he don't have a vision, that's a whole nother thing. But a good father's voice can be trusted even when his vision can't be seen. Joseph can't articulate to them what he sees, but he knows that the angel has showed him something, that his family's future is in trouble unless he makes some decisions. And so he has these difficult decisions that he has to make. He has these difficult conversations he has to have, and his family has to trust him to make these decisions that they don't see. We don't celebrate facilitators because they work behind the scenes. That they don't jump in front of the camera. And I liken it to the analogy of a movie director. A movie director, very rarely, I think Spike Lee is the exception, but very rarely will you see a director on screen. The director is making decisions behind the scene that affect what you see on screen. And so a lot of times, the director is making decisions. He's allowing certain things to happen, or he's cutting certain things out, and it doesn't make sense because they're filming the movie in the moment. However, once you get to the premiere of the movie, all of the decisions that he made that didn't make sense as you watch the movie on the screen. There's some of you who have fathers who have made decisions and you couldn't quite wrap your mind around it. That you have fathers who made decisions, or husbands who made decisions, and you couldn't quite get your finger on it. But I want to encourage you that when you see that boy walking across the stage, it'll all make sense. That when you see him not having a criminal record, it's going to all make sense. When you see that young lady getting married, it'll all make sense. When you see them elevating in their career, it'll all make sense. It may not have made sense when he was making the call, but there's a time coming that what he did behind the scenes will show itself on the big screen.
Yes.
Joseph has to make some difficult decisions. He has to facilitate some things. And even though they don't understand it, even though they don't see the danger that he sees, even though he probably can't articulate what's happening in the moment, they trust him. They trust him. They say, Joe, listen, I don't know what you're talking about, bro, but if you say Egypt's the move, we're going to Egypt. Listen, we just got to Egypt, and I done unpacked my stuff, and I'm comfortable, and I'm feeling good. I done got Jesus in a good school, but if you say we got to go to Nazareth, then we're going to Nazareth. Fathers are facilitators, and we have to make the decisions that the family does not have to make. There's a father who sits up late at night pondering things while the family sleeps, figuring out things, making moves, moving things around, moving money from here to there to make some things easier, to facilitate. The wife needs a new pair of shoes, and so he's moving money around in his mind so that he can make sure the house is still good and his wife can get the shoes. He's moving things around in his mind to make sure that the house is still good, but Junior can get whatever he needs. That he's making the decisions that many of you don't think about. And it's for this reason that we don't celebrate you. We're so busy enjoying what's happening on the screen that we don't see what you wrestle with behind the scenes. And a good director knows when to allow a scene to play out and when to intervene. Some of the greatest movie moments have happened that weren't originally in the script because a good director said, I know this isn't how it was supposed to go, but it's best that it goes this way. And this is another thing that makes a good father, that you know how to look at a situation, and even though it was supposed to go this way, you know that this way is best for my family. And so you let it play out. We don't celebrate fathers as much because they're foundations, out of sight, out of mind, and they're facilitators. They're behind the scenes. Not only that, but I'm going to give you one more. We don't celebrate fathers the same way we celebrate mothers because fathers are fingerprints. Fathers are fingerprints. This will mess me up. Fathers are fingerprints. What is a fingerprint? I think we all know. If you need a definition, just look right at your hand and look at the fingertip. A fingerprint is the impression of a fingertip on any surface. So it's the pattern that's on your finger that replicates itself when you impress on something. When you touch something, no matter how slightly you touch it, no matter how hard you touch it, but a fingerprint is when you take your fingertip and you make an impression. Now, what do I mean that fathers are fingerprints? Something interesting happens in Jesus and Joseph's story. Now, again, if you read your Bible, you know that Joseph really isn't mentioned too much in the Bible. You hear about Joseph in the early stages of Matthew and then towards the latter end of Matthew. So the most we get about Joseph is how Jesus is born, how they leave Jesus behind, and you got to go back and they let them know how stressed out they are. And really after that, you don't hear too much more about Joseph. But then something happens in chapter 13 that brought this point up. In chapter 13, Jesus goes back to his hometown and he's teaching. And his teaching gets so good that folks, you know how folks are, folks get offended. Yeah. Folks get offended because Jesus done left Nazareth and then came back to Nazareth, but he done made something of himself. Isn't it a shame how you can go off and make something of your life and come back to the very people who helped raise you, the people who saw you grow up, and instead of them being happy for all that you've accomplished, they mad because what they see in you is what they desired to be but never became, your reflection of the possibility that they never achieved. And so they're offended by Jesus, and they're so offended they say, isn't that the carpenter's son? Ain't that Mary's boy? Aren't his brothers and sisters with us? What I need you to recognize, though, is that the first correlation is to the Father. That even in their anger and hostility, The first thing they say is, ain't that the carpenter's boy? Joseph, by this time, scholars believe, is dead. Joseph is off the scene. He's no longer alive. Again, this is according to biblical scholars and theologians. They don't believe that as Jesus is going into his ministry and in his final days, which is probably why Joseph was not at the cross, only Mary was, and also why Jesus would have given Mary to his disciple, because dad was no longer there. It's dad's responsibility, and so why would I give it to my disciple? Because dad's not there. So it's believed that Joseph is dead at this time. Joseph is nothing but a memory. But this is so amazing to me that even though Joseph is not there, that there's a direct connection between Jesus and Joseph. Isn't that amazing that Joseph really ain't even Jesus' daddy, but the first correlation they make is to Joseph, which brings me to my next thought. A good father does not have to be presently present for others to know he's been present. I'm going to say that again. A good father does not have to be presently present for others to know he's been present. Joseph is dead, but his fingerprint is on Jesus. And there are fathers who may not be around us anymore, but their fingerprint is on us. There are fathers who've transitioned on to glory, but their fingerprint is on us. A father is a fingerprint. Now, how does this lead to Little Celebration? I discovered that fingerprints remain on surfaces for different times. And there's about 3 surfaces where a fingerprint can last up to 40 years. I believe it's wood surface, non-porous surfaces, and I want to say metal surfaces. It can last up to 40 years on these types of surfaces. Now, again, what does this have to do with fathers being fingerprints? Because fathers, there are ways that you touch us, that after you touch us, even when we leave your presence, people can still see you on us. You show up when every time we find ourselves in conversations and we start a sentence off with, my daddy used to always say. You show up in the ways we conduct ourselves in public. You show up through all the little life lessons and witty sayings that you would share with us. You show up in all of these different ways. Even though you're not presently present, you're still present because you touched us in such a way that you left your fingerprint on us, that even though you're not physically around us, people can tell we've been around you. A father is a fingerprint. It's amazing to me that a forensic scientist can go to a crime scene and start piecing things together. And what's interesting about a forensic scientist is they see things that you don't see. They're able to pull up things that you don't see. And so they go into a crime scene, and even though the criminal has not been there for hours, for days, for weeks, for years, they can still lift his fingerprint off of what he's touched. And I want to encourage a father today to keep touching your children. Keep touching them in their minds. Keep touching them in their hearts. Even though they get annoyed when you try to spend father-daughter time and father-son time, keep doing it, because you're leaving a fingerprint, and it may not make sense to them now. They may not appreciate it now, but that fingerprint is going to show up in how they lead their family. That fingerprint is going to show up in how they treat their spouse. That fingerprint is going to show up in how they climb the corporate ladder. That fingerprint is going to show up in how they raise their children. That fingerprint is going to show up in how they worship the Lord. That fingerprint is going to show up in how they deal with their community. Your fingerprint will be there even when you're gone. And the same way, you and I will look at a crime scene and not even think to look for fingerprints. It's the same way with a father. That your fingerprints are there, but because we only see them in moments that reflect when you touched us, that we don't think to thank you today. There are some folks who have regrets because their father touched them and they didn't realize the significance of the touch until he was gone. That as they look in the mirror and see just how much like dad they've become, only then do they miss him, because they see how significant his touch was. We don't celebrate good fathers because they're foundations. We're too busy enjoying the benefits that were paid for by the burdens that he's carrying on his back. We don't celebrate good fathers because they're such great facilitators. That they're working so hard behind the scenes. They're not trying to jump in front of the screen. They get joy when they see their family being elevated. That brings them the most joy when they know that their seed is manifesting into a great tree. That's what brings them joy. They don't go around bragging about all the things they've done, bragging about all the things they've bought you, talking about all the bills they've paid. Their greatest joy is the fact that you don't have to think about it. Their greatest joy is that you went through doors they couldn't go through. Their greatest joy is that you're doing things with your children that he wishes he could have done with you. He's such a good facilitator, and because he's a fingerprint, that he touches you, and you don't even realize that he's left something on you when he touched you. And it's for these three reasons that I want to give you one more F. That fathers are never forgotten. They're foundations, they're facilitators, and they're fingerprints. And because of those three things, a good father is never forgotten. This is why, as you go through the Bible and you look at the genealogies, there's a couple exceptions. But for the most part, as you go into the genealogies are filled with the fathers that led up to a certain time. Because fathers are never forgotten.
Yes.
Every great story begins with a father. Because a father has the seed. So I want to encourage you today that because you are the foundation that God built your family on, you will never be forgotten. I know it may get heavy sometimes. I know it's costing you a lot. I know that you're giving up a lot, but I want to encourage you that it's not in vain. And if they never say thank you, I want to say thank you. I thank you for being the foundation of your family. I thank you that God could trust you to carry your family without allowing them to tilt to one side, without allowing the roof to cave in, without allowing the appliances to go here and there, for allowing every storm to be weathered on your back, that you carried the weight of this family, that their success rested upon you. I thank you for being and volunteering to be that foundation, because we live in a system that actually rewards mothers for making sure you stay out of the home. I thank you that you saw that opportunity and said, the devil is a lie. I'd rather struggle with my family than to allow them to prosper without me. I thank you for volunteering to be a foundation. And you'll never be forgotten because you're the facilitator. You navigate your family from behind the scenes. I thank you. If they never thank you, I thank you for making the decisions they wouldn't make. I thank you for ensuring that they don't have to make those decisions. I thank you that your children didn't have to grow up before their time. They didn't have to experience things that no child should experience. I thank you because you were the facilitator, that you were working behind the scenes, that you were giving them the hard nose so that mom could be the hero and you would be the villain, but it's because you saw something that they didn't see. I thank you for making those tough decisions. And I thank you for using your voice even when they didn't see your vision. And it's my prayer that when they see the vision, that they'll come back and thank you for your voice. You'll never be forgotten because you're the fingerprint. You've impressed on your family during the times that it mattered. Thank you for making them go out of the house with you. Thank you for making them go on that fishing trip. Thank you for making them go to the movies with you. I know they're teenagers now and they don't want to be seen with you, but thank you for still walking them to the door at school. Thank you for screening their phone calls and knowing who they're talking to. Thank you for phone checking every so often. Thank you. It doesn't make sense to them, but you're making impressions that are going to show up in how they deal with their children, that are going to show up in how they are as believers. They're going to show up in the businesses that they birth. It's going to show up in ways they never imagined because you left a fingerprint on them. And for this and so many other reasons, you'll never be forgotten.